Our next presenter is Tina McIntyre. She will be presenting on restoring the rolling hills from golf course to passive park.
Good morning, everyone. So we actually started this project several years ago, and I'm excited to be able to share it with you today. It's a large project, so I'll just kind of start diving in. And I did want to acknowledge the people that I collaborated with on this, Dr. Gail Hansen and Dr. Adam Dale and their students as well. So the Rolling Hills is in Seminole County. It was a historical golf course from the 1920s, and the county purchased it probably close to 7 to 10 years ago now. And they have these, the mission and the vision for the park. So here's a kind of a brief overview of the golf course. It is embedded. The reason why the county was actually able to purchase it is that it's actually embedded in a neighborhood, so an older neighborhood. So it's not kind of behind a gated community or anything like that. It's integrated throughout, and it's very, very close to I-4. And it's in Longwood, which is just north of Altamont Springs and really major metropolitan areas. So you can see that the county came up with this basic master plan to restore the area into a passive park. And they kind of gave these preliminary labels to the area and the different fairways based on kind of the history of the area, where they wanted to go with the park. So when we started to collaborate, when they had initially purchased this golf course, historical golf course, we actually brought together IFAS along with the county. And so the county manager at the time of the Parks and Greenways came to me and said, hey, we want to restore this. We want IFAS, we want Florida Friendly involved. So how can we do that? And that's when we were able to get Dr. Hansen and Dr. Dale involved, and some undergraduate and graduate students. The graduate and the undergraduate students looked into the history of the property. And so you can see this is the site in 1948. So I might have said 20s earlier, not that long ago, but it's been around a long time. So they initially started clearing the site, and we wanted to see what those plant communities were prior to it being a golf course. And so really it was Music Pine Flatwoods and Dry Prairie, which is pretty common throughout the uplands of Central Florida. We also put together a major plant list. And so we wanted to be able to give and provide the county a list of plant species that we would recommend for various areas of the park. And so the priority plants for that list were, of course, Florida friendly, Florida natives, ones that supported wildlife, because they did want this to be a really recreational, it wasn't going to be a highly managed park. They wanted it to be a restored area, a passive park, so to speak. One really important aspect of the plant selection was that the plants were easily sourced. And that's because they do work a lot with contractors, and they were wanting species that they could easily access and able to thrive in the present site conditions without intensive management procedures. So they knew they were going to have to do some maintenance and maybe some remediation, but they really wanted things that were going to just thrive. So we also, with funding from CLU and our partnerships, we were able to do soil samples on the entire property. And so I'll be presenting that data here. And it is just under 100 acres, so it was no small feat. And props to Audrey Jennis, who really did a lot of the work with our county team. So this was obviously very sandy soils, which has decreased surface area, increased pore space, and it's low in organic matter, low nutrient and water retention, low in cation exchange and buffering capacity. So, typical Florida soils. And we kind of broke it out to Florida soil versus fairways versus the putting greens. And we did see a variation in pH in that way. So the putting greens were just under 5. The fairways were just under 6. And then your average Florida soil baseline was kind of, 6.1. Again, this is a kind of composite data analysis of the entire site. Here's when we mapped it out. So basically we created composite samples of each of the fairways. I'm sorry, I was trying to get my pointer there, but I don't think there's a pointer on this. So in any case, you can see the fairways and then the putting greens and kind of the variation of pH. So we did composite samples, basically 3 per area, and we labeled each and every one of those composite samples with a kind of alphanumeric number. So that was for pH, but we also wanted to test for nutrients because we needed to know what was going on in the soils a little bit more thoroughly. And so we looked at potassium, phosphorus, and magnesium, and you can see we use the Miralec kind of as a baseline. So the results overall were for potassium, it did need fertilizer additions. Typical results for Florida soils have low potassium retention. And so we did recommend to the county that they use some potassium enhancement as they were planting and establishing vegetation. For phosphorus, we recommended no fertilization necessary. There was a lot of residual phosphorus in the soil, either from it being just naturally high or, of course, they were fertilizing a lot with phosphorus as it was a golf course. And so those were extremely high. And then for magnesium, the fertilizer additions on the putting greens. And so we did see a little bit variation between the putting greens and the fairways. So the fairways were generally good, where the putting greens might maybe a little bit more needed there. And levels are results of historical intense management of the turf grass that was there for the golf course. So we did take a Florida-friendly landscape approach to creating some design ideas. And again, this student, Cody, he worked under Dr. Hansen and collaborated with us. And really, it was great to see the county express their interests and desires, and then the students really take that. And so I'm just going to kind of, for sake of brevity here, show you, we had the Highlands, the Grove, the Arboretum, the Meadow, the Playscape. So we really wanted to incorporate natural play into the area. So not necessarily a playground, but, an area where they could kind of climb on natural rock features or maybe some logs and things like that. Duck pond, there are several ponds on the area, and so kind of restoring those. Having a dog park was really important in the community meetings, and so designing that. And just to kind of give you a current status update, so the high priority areas, my check boxes are a little off there, but basically we're able to improve this park on an annual basis based on capital improvements from the county budget as approved by the Board of County Commissioners. So it's not something we can do all at once. It's kind of like, little steps. And so they were able to demolish the old clubhouse, which was a good thing. Hire the consulting firm GAI to do a real master plan. So they kind of took the original master plan, incorporated the student ideas, and then created a formal master plan for the area. So that is done. They've installed fountains on all the ponds. They've removed invasive species, remediated the arsenic, which is a big problem, and they're still working on that. The green check actually should be up a little bit because they're still working on remediating that arsenic. They have to test several times at negative, at an acceptable range, and that has not yet consistently happened. For the next steps, they're going to be capping major wells and using smaller wells, creating paved loop trail. That's really the next big thing, is creating that bike path throughout the landscape, and install a pavilion. So you could see The vegetation is not actually up here. We're still working with moving towards that, but I do feel like eventually we're going to be able to work with them to have a Florida-friendly landscape at this park. So again, thank you to all the contributors, and yeah, thank you for listening.